Let's move on to some state news and politics because it is Thursday, and that means it's time to speak with Brandon Lewis, who is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, and you can read the latest from him and their reports and news and politics from TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you today, sir?
I'm great. I'm sorry we have to go from breaking news to broken government, but that seems to be the cadence.
Well, and, actually, the first thing I want to talk to you about is a Chattanooga story and something I've talked about on the show last week as well, but, you have Mayor Tim Kelly kind of saying he's lowering property taxes, but not really. Actually, they're going to pay more, at least residents in Chattanooga, if the proposal passes.
Well, this is the biggest BS shell game in Tennessee is the property tax discussion on, well, the rates go up, but the values go down, or the values go up, but the rates go down. It's just BS, right? When you send somebody an invoice for something, it's either higher or lower. When it goes higher, you have increased taxes. Say it with me. This is basic math. If I showed my, 6-year-old the tax bill, they could point to the one that was bigger and know that it was an increase. And so why Tim Kelly can't conceive of this is, I would say it's beyond me, but it's the same old type of political manipulation that they've been doing for years. And some of your listeners will recall when I owned my painting business, oh gosh, this has been 15 years ago, and I've advertised on GOW for probably 15 years running in one form or another, with a little break in the middle. I fought the property tax increase during the Great Recession under Mayor Littlefield, and it seems to me that Democrat-leaning mayors always wait until the economy is sagging, and then they're like, that now would be a good time to stick it to the citizens. And the other thing, the beef that I've always had as these liberal politicians put greater burdens, especially on seniors in their districts, which is what this is. I mean, $400 a year on average. I mean, that's a lot of money for somebody on a fixed income, and it always goes up and it never goes down, and inflation is robbing them of their purchasing power. This is not the time to raise taxes. What I would love to see, which never seems to happen, is before there is a tax cut or tax increase conversation, there needs to be about 3 months of a cost-cutting conversation, but you never see that happen. Because they just look at their constituents like, I'm sure when Tim Kelly is speaking to a crowd of people, all he sees are human ATM machines. That's what they look like to him. And so I think this is irresponsible. Before we talk about tax increases and rates and everything else, we need to look at city government. I mean, we've got DEI hires inside of city government. We've got inefficient departments. We've got wasteful spending. I mean, I can't remember what they spent. It's $250,000 to redo the city logo. I could have done it in Canva in 5 minutes and charged them $10. And so this kind of stuff should irk your listeners, and they should reach out to the mayor's office. They should call their city council person. And if somebody raises your taxes, you should be ready to put a candidate in and get rid of them.
Yeah, and I want to remind people, you had mentioned it's kind of a shell game. I want to remind people how they're getting away with this. So basically, the rate was 2.25%. But because of a Tennessee state law, when assessments really went up in Chattanooga, that forced the rate to go down to 1.55%. But because they're like, well, that's not enough, like you said, they look at the constituents as like an ATM machine. They're saying, no, we're going to make it 1.99%. But then he came back later and said, okay, no, we'll make it 1.93%. And they're saying it's a giant tax cut because that's lower than the 2.55, but that is still much higher than what the current rate under law is right now, which is 1.55. And their excuse is that you always hear this anytime someone asks for a tax increase. They always say, well, we need it for police and firefighters because, obviously no one's against police and firefighters. What's your response to that?
Okay. So here's what I would say to Tim Kelly. If we really cared about reducing crime in the city, we would have done it. We are not repeatedly rated is one of the least safe cities in the nation because Tim Kelly is really good and really cares about reducing crime. He doesn't care about quality of life issues, littering, loitering, panhandling, drugs and prostitutes on the street. I mean, it used to be a long time ago in Chattanooga when Bob Corker was in office. If your little happy ass was caught walking up and down the street drunk or doing things that you shouldn't, the paddy wagon would pull up and you'd go down to the drunk tank or wherever it was. Like, they kept the streets clean, and they knew, just as Rudy Giuliani did in the Big Apple when he reduced crime when they said it couldn't be done. And that's a common complaint you hear, or a common refrain you hear from anybody who lives in the city as their houses get broken into and everything else. Oh, it's just living in a big city. It's living in a big city that's ran by Democrats is what it is. And so when you go to really nice big cities in Florida and places like that, and I go to them all the time, like, they don't have this stuff because they're very stringent in their policing. And so I don't buy this. I've looked at a lot of the wasteful spending projects that the city of Chattanooga undertakes, and they could very easily take that money, dispense with the things that aren't core government functions, and find the resources they need for these police and fire folks without taxing the citizens more than they already do.
Yeah, it always amazes me. I wish we could just, the church had an interesting approach. You tithe at 10%. You never hear them change. It's like, can we just have a percentage and keep it that way forever? But it just never seems to.
Well, to me, it ought to be when you buy your house, you get taxed at whatever it's worth, and it just stays that way forever. If you decide to move into a new home, then you got a buying decision to make. But it's very egregious. There have been to think that you can never get out of debt with the government. It does not encourage saving. It does not encourage proper planning. It makes it harder for people to retire. People don't like going into retirement with uncertainty. People don't like going into life with uncertainty. And when you put uncertainty in the market, which is what Tim Kelly is doing, it hurts the citizens. And finally, there have been a lot of conversations in the Tennessee legislature, and I think we will actually see some movement on this year. Chris Todd introduced a bill. I heard Bo Watson talk about this in a Signal Mountain Conservative Club meeting the other night, that they're introducing legislation to cap increases. And because all these liberal-ran cities and even some Republican, little r, quotation marks, really stands for rhino, that are raising taxes on their citizens, 30, 40, 20%. I mean, who can handle that? They're going to try to rein those people in so that folks can have more certainty about, what does it cost me to live in this home forever?
Yeah, that's it. That is something, and I know they're kind of working on that in Florida. DeSantis has been really big on the property tax issue, where he's like, look, this idea where you're basically renting your place from the government and it changes and the value changes, that's just not, like you said, it's not how it should work. We should have an understanding of what things are going to cost in terms of taxes when we move in, and that's not how it works. I'm speaking with Brandon Lewis, who is the founder. Yeah, go ahead.
And to raise it in conjunction with inflation, which is what happened during the recession. Like, that's a double whammy. It's not just that the rates went up, but your purchasing power's gone down. So if you look at a rate increase now, if it's X, it's probably more like 1.4X. I mean, that's how the math works. And so it's just a tough time to be doing this to people in Chattanooga.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you bring that up, because you had talked about inflation, and the way the government leaders look at it is, well, that's why we have to raise it, because inflation is affecting us on the government level. And it's like, okay, so wait a minute. So it's hurting your constituents. So that means, but government's more important. We got to make sure the government has the money. If we're more important, it's affecting us. That's more important.
Yeah, cut first, tax second. And in closing on this tax topic, when I fought tooth and nail to stop the tax increase that Ron Littlefield shoved down our throats, it was very wildly unpopular. Our hell raising, which is there's another thing they do. They'll say, we're going to raise it this much, and they always know there will be a backlash, and then they come back and go, okay, we're only going to raise it a third as much. Yep. And that's what they did.
Exactly.
So I did save Chattanoogans through my efforts, I believe, because I rallied the troops, millions and millions of dollars, and that has rolled on for years and years. And no thank you notes were ever sent, by the way. And so as you watch this stuff happen, like it's the same old game, right? I've seen these same games played for decades, and they're playing one right now. And I think that Tennesseans and Chattanoogans just, number one, you got to fight it tooth and nail. But number two, as soon as you see somebody that's not representing your interests, you need to recruit and get behind candidates to replace folks. That's the only way that you'll have better leadership in Chattanooga.
That's for sure. Brandon Lewis is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Read his stuff at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, I got to cut you off there because we're still covering that breaking news. I know we had a lot of other things we could have discussed today, but we'll have to talk about it in the future, and we will. I'm sure. Brandon, appreciate it, my friend.
All right, buddy. Get back on the beat.
All right, there you go.